Welcome to Sable BooKnight, an independent publishing company located in Canada, offering author services and accepting submissions for anthologies. Visit sablebooknight.ca for more information, and BooKnight shares the K. Here are your hosts, Tania and Story Tyrant. Hello and welcome to episode 7 of the Sable BooKnight podcast. My name is Tania.
Hi, I'm Story Tyrant.
And today we are going to talk about writing groups and anthologies. So how have you been lately, Tyra?
Good, yourself?
Not too bad, actually. These B12 injections are helping a little bit with some positivity and energy, so every little bit helps. So in terms of writing groups, how do you think is the best way to find a writing group?
That I don't know anymore. It used to be you would go to any of the local libraries and someone would have posted, and used to have those community post boards, and someone would always have posted up starting a group, or we're meeting, or whatever, and you would just join, or the library itself would have a writers group that would meet there. Also, I would go online and type in your area, like Facebook, and you'd go to Facebook and say what's happening in name your town, and then it was usually, not always, but usually someone would post a writing group that was meeting.
You could also network with other people online, like through your AuthorTube channel or through any kind of, Facebook groups and stuff, and sometimes you'll find some that way. So what do you think is the purpose of a writing group?
Now that is different. There are different types of writing groups, and so you got to know what you want. That will be my job for people. Their thing they have to do is figure out what it is they want from a writers group. So if you are a beginner writer, you might just want educational feedback. I say just, and it's not a small thing, but you might want. So for instance, you might want a writing group where you can put a question down, and the person running the group, or persons in the group as a group, come up with answers for the next meeting. So, but again, if it's a good writing group, you're always bringing something to read. So that's important. In some cases, you bring something that you print off multiple copies. People get a copy, they make their notes on that copy, and then you get it back. So there's that kind. There's the kind where you bring a piece, people make notes, and you read, but you're not supplying them with a copy. And then there is the groups where it's a combo. Now, some groups, the point of those groups is to refine a work for publication. Other groups, it's to refine the work for the self, to expand one's knowledge of writing. I think more of a class structure. I think that a better group versus, there's not like a worse group, but a better group always wants you to be reading work or bringing work you're working on every time you come.
Yeah, I think that's good. I like how we had our structure where probably like the first hour was we have a specific topic in terms of the craft of writing. And then the next hour is like the round table where each person, it's like a critique circle. So you read something that you're working on, and then we go around person to person and talk about what was good, what could be done better, what was confusing, and ask any questions and make any suggestions. I think that worked really well.
The argument with that class was that it was up to you, or whoever was coming in, if they wanted to make copies, it was up to them. But it was up to all of us to bring our ears and some blank paper to make notes, if you make notes, when a person read. And I thought we were doing pretty good with that. I felt I liked the idea that we had at least half the group at any one time was seeking to publish, and half the group at any time was seeking to improve, but we always had one or two members, a group, who was putting together something for family, like a memoir or a memoir slash cookbook or a memoir family history, like of a whole bunch of things, which I felt was very interesting. I always thought that was very, very cool.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
good to have, like, it's nice to have like a themed group, like a romance writing group, a sci-fi writing group. But I think when you're in like a rural area, that is
Yeah.
hard to do because there's less writers around, and there's a variety of genres that everybody's writing in. So I think a wide ranged one is good. It also helps each writer will learn something from the other writers if they're writing a different genre, and I think it's good to have a different skill set.
Yes. So I also believe writing groups actually keep you writing, or they can. Correction, they can.
Definitely.
Um, they can because you have to bring something you're working on. So they keep you moving forward. Also, through writers groups, you can sometimes find markets, or you could find about local contests, or you can find out about far flung contests, like,
Yeah.
you know.
I think like the one thing that I wasn't a big fan of is when we did the assignments, like doing a writing prompt and everybody needing to do that. I think that's good at a certain level, but because we have so many different levels in the group, I don't think that that works across the board. So I think that if you have a group of for writers that is for writers who are just starting out, I think the writing prompts are really good. But it would
I
have
Yeah,
to be like advertised as such and not,
when
added.
we did that for quite a few classes, because we had five, well, it was always three of them, but there was five of them on and off that wanted prompts. They just wanted prompts. And I was like, and when I was hosting that, I would say, it's optional. I was always saying it's optional. And yet that one lady,
Yeah.
you shouldn't say it's optional. I said, well, it is optional. People are working on their own stuff. But oh, she was quite adamant that we have writing prompts. She needed writing prompts. And I was like, that's okay. It's just others don't, you
Yeah,
know.
I think it's good if you say up front, okay, for those of you who don't have a specific project you're working on, here is the writing prompt so that you have something to read at the next session.
See, and I was bad because we had the same core group for so long, I would stop repeating instructions. So you had a couple new people show up and, oh, we have to do a writing prompt. And I was like, oh, no, you just do it if you want. But, she had panicked to try to get this writing prompt done. And I was like, oh, no, I thought you just bring in, didn't you realize? Oh, my fault. I didn't say. And then I would, or you
Yeah,
would, or somebody else in the group would say, oh, no, those are optional.
yeah.
Right. Except for the one lady who would be like, no, we should all be doing it. No, everybody wants to do that.
Yeah. Okay, so then the other benefit of the writing group is the fun assignment of putting together an anthology.
Yes, yes. That is intimidating. It is very intimidating. It sounds easy, especially if not in a writing group. If you've been separate from a writing group and you've put together anthologies for others, which I had done, and you have done,
Hmm.
and others in our group had actually done. So we all thought that I just thought it'd be the same as putting it together for like Lakewood Big Writers Group or putting it together for these other groups. It was not. I was unprepared for people ignoring instructions, for people saying, well, I don't want, this is how I'm doing my story. They have to change theirs. And it's like, but they've written theirs and you haven't written yours. I was like,
It's difficult to manage and to keep everybody organized and on the same page. I
I was
think, well,
unprepared.
I think that maybe what the issue is with how we had it, I liked how we had it. I was all in for how we had it.
Oh,
But
yeah.
not everybody wants to be confined to a set theme, structure, and having all the stories connect. Not everybody's willing to do that. So I think
Yeah.
something like that might be best doing it outside of the writing group.
Yeah,
And
did
and then
that.
if you're going to do an anthology with the writing group and you have multiple different people with different opinions, then maybe it's best to do like, this is the theme, they're not connected, write what you want to write.
Yes,
I think that might work
yes,
better.
yes. That would have worked wonderfully. We could have had that. That would have been no problem, and it would have been done. I was just unprepared for. Yeah, the thing is, everybody in that group who were contributing had all been parts of groups who had done anthologies. So I thought, well, we'll do the interconnected thing. It'll be a bigger challenge and everyone's going to love it. Instead of, well, no, I want to do the story this way and everybody should change theirs. Or nope, I've changed my mind. My character is going to die. And it's like, no, if you're, like, we have 5 other stories and you're in this part of the timeline, your characters can't die, and like, I'm sitting there going, oh my God, I got overwhelmed and I the thing is I thought we agreed. Like if we're sitting in the group, I thought, okay, this is the agreement, this is the pieces everybody gets, this is how it has to end, and this is the timeline. We all had those notes, and then
Well,
people
and
were like,
I think it was going well until people just started disappearing or stopped showing up or didn't finish their
oh yes.
stories, you know.
And several people said it was too much pressure on them. They thought they could do it. It was just too much pressure.
Yeah.
And
It
I was like, oh,
it's hard to put an anthology together overall, like especially getting people to contribute. But yeah, I think it just we didn't have the luck that we needed to keep it going.
no,
But
no.
maybe
And
next time.
and I had trouble saying no to people. And I was going through some health issues at the time, which
Mm,
did not help.
yeah,
I
me
was,
too.
and yeah, it was, and I hadn't realized how bad it was until I literally drove to Smitty's to meet with people after our group, sat in the car, and realized that if I didn't drive home, I was going to be sleeping in my car
Yeah.
because I was done. I was completely cooked. And I got home. I got the other side of Selkirk, had to park the vehicle until things got home, had to sit in the car for half an hour, got into the house and laid down. And you lay there and you can barely move. And it was awful. It was
Yeah.
awful. I hadn't realized how dangerously low my iron had been. Apparently, if you leave your iron low for a long period, it causes other health issues. And my blood pressure
Definitely.
was going so low that, which didn't make any sense to my doctor because I'm fat, right? Sorry.
Yeah.
So, this is a weird aside. It was one of those things where if you're going to do an anthology, don't overcomplicate it unless you've done anthologies with those people already. How's that?
Yeah, no, I like that. Something simple and coming up with like one set theme or genre to write in. Like I submitted to this thing about called tomato slices. I have a chicken parmesan recipe in it. But I mean tomatoes, anything involving tomatoes. It could have been poetry or stories or nonfiction or fiction. And I think it just something like that goes really well. If you open up something that could be written in multiple genres, then I think it'll go very well. It's just how do you come up with that theme?
Mhm. Yeah. Also, the other thing you can do, which I always thought we did it like when we Writers Group a couple of times, I loved it, is you had to we had 7 items that had to appear in your story. One situation, or was it two? I think it was, and one thing had to happen. So the person had to ride a bus. They had to have a rubber tree plant, cup of coffee. I can't remember the other ones were. And I wrote this story, and it was really good. I wrote this story, and people went, "Wow!" And I highlighted in my story because you had to hand in a copy. I highlighted in my story my 7, and I can't remember what the situation was, but anyway, it was funny because out of I think there was like 43 or 4 people at that time in the group. I think like 18 of us did it, like did the assignment, and every single story was different. Like every single
I
story.
like it. Even if you're not doing it to publish, just the
Yeah, we were
process itself is fun.
yeah.
you can get a lot of good stories out of that.
So anthologies are okay. First off, if you're writing short stories, they're really good practice for honing your skills for precision. Okay, for using precise descriptors, for utilizing the five senses clearly, for really buckling down and focusing on the character's point of view and how they're interpreting the world. I honestly think that short stories can really do that if you're forced to write them well. And what I mean in that is I have seen stories handed to me, like the lady who walks through her living room. So she walks from her dining room table through her living room to the window, and she's apparently mourning her cat. And it was a very interesting 3,000 words that where nothing actually happened. You didn't even realize the cat had died, just that she was missing this cat. And there was no drama, there was no tension, there was nothing. And this individual was very upset because they had long flowing descriptors of the carpet and long flowing descriptors of the curtains and of the paint on the wall and the way the light played on it. And I was like, yeah.
Might be
So,
beautiful
and then,
words, but there has to be something more to the story.
yes, but it was more than that. There's this old saying, don't use a 5-penny word when a 1-penny word will do. And never use 10 words when 1 word works. Like, if you use 10 words, okay, The Last of the Mohicans. I read The Last of the Mohicans in junior high, the unabridged, okay, where he took 3 pages to say the sun rose. Yes.
Wow.
He was being paid by the word, and so he used a lot of words to say very little. This dissolved tension. It made it very hard to maintain tension. He was able to maintain a line of tension by carefully, so he would kind of step out of his characters and would do almost like an observer doing the scene. So the sun rises in these 3 pages, 4 pages, and you're like, okay. But then he would step back into his character. So you could literally skip those parts if you wanted, in some cases. But he was doing a subtle thing. For instance, it would be a clear day and making smoke very visible. So there was this threat, because they're being pursued, right? So you have this sense of threat.
Yeah.
But it was subtle. Like, he didn't say, he would talk about clarity and how this would allow sound to travel better. So although he's doing this massive expansion, it dulled the tension and it slowed or even outright stopped movement in the story. The story is not moving forward when you're doing 3 pages, almost 4, of the sun rose,
Well,
right?
that happened when I was reading the book that you lent me, Radigan, I think it was called.
Yes.
I got through 8 pages, and in that 8 pages, absolutely nothing happened other than him approaching his friend's farm. That was it. And then I couldn't do it anymore just because and I skimmed through a few other pages to see what the dialogue was like, but there's just so much thick, dry areas where it's all about the character and who he was and what his intentions were, and I just found it was just too dry to keep going.
When it's a Western, when Westerns often, and the era it was written in, you are expected to set the scene. The reader expects by the end of the first chapter to have some basic background on who the character is. B, know whatever is going to be moving them forward. What's going to be the what do you call it? The driving issue of the novel.
Mm-hmm.
C, it's written by a man, so yes, he's setting the scene for the environment, and you need to understand the environment before the chapter is done, because the environment in those kind of stories is a character. It creates tension like by being the environment. So I'm trying to remember writing. I love those westerns,
Well, I
but
don't know, like it wasn't
I
even
grew up
about the
reading them.
scene though. It wasn't a description about the scene. It was about his friend and how his friend acted, and then how he considered himself this type of person who did this and
Mm-hmm.
this, and it would be like 3 paragraphs just on
Mm-hmm.
the type of person he considered himself. And there's no
Yeah,
action, there's no tension, there's no movement, there's nothing. And it's just, I don't know. It was just, I'm learning
yeah,
lately over the last couple of years. I consider myself a little bit more wider read,
good.
and I'm beginning to see what I do and do not like in stories,
Mm-hmm.
which is, and that's the good thing about, borrowing books from you or Landa, or finding new books to read and getting surprise books as gifts. And it's just, like I grew up reading, I think Danielle Steele was the first author that my mom had gotten me into, and at the time I really enjoyed it. Now if I pick up a Danielle Steele novel, I'm like, this isn't really that great written. Like the first paragraph was one big run-on sentence in the book, the
Yeah.
last book I picked up of Danielle Steele, and I'm just like, okay, she can pretty much get away with publishing just about anything because of her name. There were some books that I would still go back and read because I enjoyed the stories. But now it's like, I've read Fourth Wing and Prior of the Orange Tree and all these other books, and it's just, yeah, I don't know. I'm becoming a picky reader. That's what I told my husband last night. I am a picky reader now.
But see, and that's important. That comes. That is one of the warnings you really need to give people who are getting into writing. And I have done it in our class and with friends
Yeah,
multiple times. When you start studying reading, when you go from someone who enjoys reading to someone who actually is analyzing works, working on improving your own craft, learning the craft because it is a craft, you stop, you start reading, and go, well, that wasn't really well written, or that was crap, or you flip through and go, okay, this person easily could have increased tension by, or you're going through and you grab your pen and you're like, yeah, I got to start editing because yeah, I don't need this, don't need that. And that's how I got through a book called Bitten. Now, there's nothing wrong with the story. It's a great story. A lot of people love that story. But for me, I actually edited out almost 200 pages.
oh my goodness.
And I was like, yeah, all that doesn't be there. But it's because of my reading style. Also, you're going to laugh at this. When you read a story, will change whether or not you like it. In the dead of winter, you're going to read stuff that in summer you would hate. You couldn't read that in summer. Like for instance, I read westerns in winter. I don't know why, but I'm not fussy on reading them in summer. And like I'm talking classic Louis L'Amour westerns. And I don't know if it's like you say, it drags in spots. Everything is about the character and subtlety in a lot of Louis L'Amour's writing. It's like if you read Smiley's People or if you read Le Carre, right? I cannot read Le Carre in summer. I want to kill that man in summer. Okay? I cannot read a Le Carre novel in the summertime. I'm sorry. It's like you pick that book up and you're like, whack, whack, whack. Okay? I do not need 5 pages on someone's office that I will never be in again. Okay, I get you're hiding a clue. One clue. One clue. In an office that big with all that stuff, you could have hid 3,000 clues. Okay?
Yeah,
I get it. And in winter, in January, in Manitoba, when it is miserable out and you don't want to go anywhere and you want to sit down and you want to have a fire either on the computer screen or actual fire and you're sitting there thinking you should throw the book in said fire, but you open it up and you start reading and you have a cup of Yorkshire Gold, or cocoa with some, something in it. You've Irished your cocoa. You're sitting there. Suddenly, I can read Le Carre, but and I was able to read the whole book and thought that's actually a really good, like it's really well done
yeah.
in January.
I think like, okay, there's this one author, I can't remember her name. I've got it over on my shelf, but she writes like dirty demon stories.
Spicy.
And yes, spicy. dirty, spicy demon romance erotic stories, and they are very poorly written. Like the skill is very poorly written, but I enjoy reading them because the storyline is interesting. And yes, there are some very dirty scenes in there. And if I'm in the mood for a dirty book, I will read it. And it's a fast read, it's a lighter read. So I get through them pretty quickly. But it's not something that I would go out and spend a lot of money on.
Yeah.
But yeah, things like the really heavy, like the thicker fantasy books that are constantly moving, that have a lot of world drama and tension happening, in addition to having well-written characters. I think those are some of my favorite books.
Like, I hadn't thought about this, but in the summertime, I read a lot of Stephen King as a kid. You got Daniel Steele. I was given Stephen King.
Yeah, that makes a big difference, eh? With complete opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah. And before Stephen King, I was given a lot of golden era science fiction. A lot. I read Tolkien in grade 5. I read The Hobbit in my dad read me The Hobbit, and I finished it in grade 4. And in grade 5, I had already gone through books like Dracula Unabridged and a bunch of those books. So I was reading a lot of mythical horror, or not mythical, maybe that's not the right word, like the Canterbury Tales I read in grade 5. Not appropriate for children. The Baleful Beasts, again, not really appropriate for children. Stories of darkness and loss, not appropriate for children. But, I read those stories in grade 5, along with Dracula, and they were very, Follow the House of Usher, boring. I found that very boring. But I went from that, I loved Dracula, found Follow the House of Usher boring, and then went into Stephen King. And I do find Stephen King and books like, because I also read books like, where is he? Well, I love Jim Butcher. But I read books like, what's his name? He's this big tall guy. The Reacher books, Lee Child books. I find those are fast reads, and I think he does fight scenes very well, but very masculinely, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's a good read for learning how to write from the male perspective as a woman. And yeah, for the fight scenes and stuff, it was very well written. I found for enjoyment purposes, I didn't enjoy it as much as other books, but I enjoyed it more than the Radigan book. I had to stop reading that. But yeah, I mean, that's okay. Everybody has different, reading interests and stuff. But we should probably get back on topic of writing groups and anthologies. Is there anything else you would like to say about this before we end the episode?
So for writing groups, know what you're looking for. If you feel you really need a group where, well, first off, if there's no groups in your area, you might have to make one. You might have to be the person who starts a writing group. But understand why you want to join one. Because you can also join online. I mean, joining physically is one thing, but you can join online. And know why. Are you joining a writing group to keep yourself writing? Because that's a different group than if you're joining a writing group to expand your skills. If you're joining a writing group because you want you want to have that friendship. You want to build a friendship with other writers, which is important because writing is very solitary, and the camaraderie when you have a group of people who do a solitary thing is pretty great. It really is. You need that. Also, sometimes you need to bounce ideas off of people who won't look at you like you're insane, Like when you're standing in Cantyre and you're looking at the new implements for gardening and you're going, hey, this looks great. And your friend says, what do you mean? I said, look at this. Imagine the tool marks were left in a skull if I was bashing someone's head in with this. And then she goes really loud and quickly scares the bejeebers out of you. She's a writer! And you look over and there's all these people staring at you in horror. And I'm like, yes. But I'm trying, like, because my idea was if I'm someone inspecting or trying to figure out how a person died, you find this really weird tool mark, what could have caused it. And you have 3 gardeners, but only one is using a new tool, like.
Yeah, for sure.
So maybe you want to bounce an idea off of somebody else. Like, I have read a couple, upon request, I've read a couple short stories lately, or sections of stories lately, and the person said to me, "There's something wrong with this," and I'm like, "Yeah, there is." And how did I put it to her? I don't know her. She's online, so that helps because I feel less like
Hmm.
I have to be nice. But she doesn't understand how some very basic things work. So she's trying to write a mystery and she can't figure out why it's not working. And I'm like, first off, it was like my story with the door and the guy saying he was trapped in a basement, but the door opened inward, so he had access to the pins for the hinges. And he said like I had like there was rocks on the floor and stuff, so he could have actually knocked that hinge out and got out that way. But he says, "Oh no, like I couldn't even see the hinges, but the door opened inward, so you knew he was lying." Um, it's little, and it may not be like a big thing, but when you have a 90-pound woman tackles a 280-pound man, and she takes him down and puts his arms behind his back and snaps on the
She couldn't
cuffs,
do
there's
that.
no. And not only that, if he's this big bodybuilder, he cannot put his hands behind his back to
No,
have his
he's
hands.
too big to do that.
His arms won't do that.
Yeah.
So you're sitting there going, or when you have someone and they've gotten this gold, and I tried to explain how heavy gold was to this individual. This was decades ago, and they could not get it at the time. The mint had that gold bar you go and you could lift.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I went, and it's heavy. It's like really heavy. This little gold bar, and you lifted it like whoa, and the guy says, "Oh, it's not that heavy. That's the chain." And the guard says, "No, there's no weight from the chain's weight is actually not there. Like you just lift it." And people don't understand how heavy it is. Or the guy robs a bank machine or a car, and he takes out 5 bags of quarters, like big bags of quarters with $1,000 of quarters in each one. No, he's not running down the street with those 5 bags. You know,
Yeah.
a,
So when you're
even
looking
about
for a writing group, this is kind of the information that you want to be able to get out of it.
yeah, like say if you're writing mysteries, ask is like say if you're running an ad, let's say you're doing the group yourself, say a mixed genre group, is there mystery writers who are really interested in getting together for coffee? Is there Are there science fiction writers? Like what are the genres you write? If you write one genre, fine. If you write multiple genres, ask. Like don't be embarrassed. Like for a time I was part of a romance writers group, and I was part of a science fiction writers group and a general group, and I got the most out of the general group, though I got some great editing out of that romance writers group. The sci-fi group, they met mostly online, which I guess makes sense. And it was frustrating because everybody had different tools, and we would spend like half the 2 hours fighting with getting people online and offline and trying to figure out what was going on. You know what I mean? So I
Yeah,
found it
the
very frustrating.
technical
They
side of
had
it.
two Yeah, the technical side was always a problem, and that's another thing. How are you going to meet? If you meet in person, do you have a computer? Let's say you're bringing your work on a computer. Make sure you can actually access your files offline, because there's no guarantee where you're going has internet. I know people say, "Oh no, everybody says internet." No,
That's why
they
it's better
don't.
to print stuff out when you're meeting in person rather than having it. And it's also
Yes,
very
that's
distracting to have somebody sitting there. Like if someone's reading and you're taking notes on your laptop about their story, the keying is very distracting. So I think it's not a wise decision to bring your laptop to writing meetings. Like
no, no.
it's different for us. Like if we're meeting or doing our per writers group and we're reading something and we have our laptop, that's a little bit different. But if you have like a critique circle going, then it's distracting.
Yeah, yeah, it is very distracting, and it can be struggle. Plus, you can hit the wrong button and move your computer, and then you're like, wait, I've lost my spot, because that happens all the time.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So why are you going to this group? Are you going to this group to polish your material for publication, i.e., you've basically written the story already? Are you going to this group to expand your skill sets and you're in the process of creating the story? Because I try to explain this to people. You can't critique certain things if the story's not written. So is this going to be a critique group? Or is this going to be a development group? A combo group? Are you just getting together to talk over works you're working on? And what is your goal? Like, why do you want to join this group? Like, what is the goal?
And if you're creating a group, I think it's important to keep that in mind and also include that in like the title, like the Selkirk Writing Development class or the Selkirk Writers Critique Group. And, and make it very obvious so that people will know and only join if that is what they're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. Once you figure out what you want from a group, it'll be much easier to find a group or to create a group. Are you willing? First off, can you find a neutral space to meet, i.e. a local coffee shop, a local restaurant that has a dead day? We picked Wednesdays at Smitty's in Selkirk because Wednesdays was their deadest day of the week. It was a day they struggled with. Wednesdays afternoons, they have like nobody. So we said, what is your worst day of the week? They said Wednesday. Wednesday afternoons and Wednesday evenings are our slowest day of the week. And I said, okay. We talked and we said, Wednesdays will be our day. We meet at Smitty's. For the winter, because of driving, we meet in the afternoon. And in the summer, where they say Wednesdays, it could die at 4 o'clock in Smitty's, and they may not have any other customers in the restaurant. We've been there where we're the only people, and they've actually sent someone from the other side because we were literally the only people in the restaurant. And she said, yeah, I know, it died at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and you guys are the only people. Remember they were vacuuming and they were cleaning seats that one day? Well, not one day, many, many times in the evening on Wednesdays. And you're like, they said, well, you're the only people here, and no one's been here since 5 or since wherever.
For sure.
Yeah. That's why they cut the hour.
I think that's a good idea. But I think we should probably wrap things up. So,
Okay.
It's all good. So everybody, thanks for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day, afternoon, evening, night, or whatever, and happy writing.
Yes, and remember, story comes first.
Bye. Thanks for joining us today. We hope you have a great rest of your day, afternoon, evening, night, or whatever, and keep on writing.
Yes, and remember, story comes first.